VR can take you anywhere you can imagine, from the depths of the ocean to outer space, from a city you can crush as a monster to a convenience store where you can work for a robot. It's really an incredible piece of technology, so why are so many of the games released for it shooting galleries? Combining locomotion and action with VR can be difficult, so I understand why early shooters kept the player in one spot, but we've definitely advanced past that point by now. Still, that doesn't mean that all shooting galleries are bad, right? Greetings folks and welcome to Horns and a Headset. You can call me Horns and I'm here to show you the best and worst VR has to offer. Today we're ending a very long wait by finally taking a good hard look at Eternity Warriors VR. Eternity Warriors VR is based on the mobile game series of the same name, minus the VR part I mean. But while the mobile games are action RPGs with the typical mobile game accoutrement, developer Vanimals describes the VR spin-off as having, quote, arcade-style gameplay. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means that it plays sort of like an arcade light gun shooter, since the player mostly stands still and enemies come out from all sides. Each level of the game keeps the player in one place, and there are actually only two levels depending on how you look at it. One is set in what appears to be a half-destroyed parking garage during the apocalypse, while the other appears to be some sort of library. For each environment, you choose a difficulty level and face several waves of enemies from a few different parts of the map. Now, I really want to emphasize this again. Gameplay involves no player-controlled locomotion whatsoever. Each wave has you in one still location. If there's a plus side to this, it's that since the environments don't have to work from every angle, they look really good. There's a lot of detail in the backgrounds and they're higher resolution than I'd be able to get from most games with my weak PC. The enemy designs can be pretty cool too, and the weapons are nice and over the top in their appearances. There are 3 weapon sets from which to choose, each one looks nuts and works differently. And I'm going to focus on those, since that's really what defines the gameplay. I was drawn first to the Sword and Shield, as I opened this game up expecting it to be a melee-focused affair. It definitely isn't. But to the game's credit, the waves and enemy behavior do change based on which weapon you pick. To start with, the Sword and Shield work exactly how you'd expect them to, and the shield can also be used to fire out a weak but long-distance beam. The versatility of the setup is nice, as is the fact that you always have a shield at your disposal, but it's clearly not what this game is designed for. There's absolutely nothing satisfying about the sword play. Heck, there's barely any indication that you're actually hurting the demons. And while the shield is nice to have, unless you want to get swarmed very quickly, you need to use the weak sauce blaster power regularly. Plus, as with the sword itself, it's never really clear when the shield is working. The next typical VR weapon you can use is a bow. The bow is, in my opinion, the worst option. For one, while the motion of pulling back your arrow might be cool in a slower game, or if you didn't have to do it that often, here it becomes painful. There are 2 different kinds of arrows you can switch between at will. One is a relatively straightforward sci-fi explodey arrow, which you have to aim perfectly to get a hit. The other is a little more cartoonish, as the arrowhead opens to launch small, laser-guided projectiles. You don't have to manually aim with this one, which is nice, but the trade-off is that it doesn't do much damage, even if the projectiles all hit one target. As far as defense goes, you have a shield dome thing that freezes enemies in place, which is very useful, but still somewhat limited in its utility. I really didn't get much of a feel for how I was supposed to use it at all while I played. My preferred option is to go with the guns, which honestly seem like a better fit for this post-apocalyptic world anyway. The option includes a handgun and a shotgun, one for hitting targets far away, and the other for hitting targets up close. It's a lot easier on the arms than using the bow, and at least for me it's also much easier to aim accurately. The handgun can be charged up for a more powerful shot, which is handy, even though it can be difficult to tell when it's fully charged. The gun setup also has what might be the most effective defensive feature in the game, a droppable shield wall that covers a decent percentage of the area from which enemies can come at you. It's balanced out by a cooldown timer that leaves you open for attack after a while, but I'd still probably take it over the handheld shield or the dome thing. While it's nice that players have these options to mix up gameplay, I wouldn't say that Eternity Warriors VR is the best shooting gallery game for the Quest. The number of enemies that you have to fight at once can easily become overwhelming, and it's not always clear just how you're supposed to handle them. But for a $15 price tag, if you want a game that looks good and just gets straight to the action, you could definitely do worse. Just make sure that that is what you want going into it. There isn't a ton of content here, but it's serviceable and it looks good. If that's what you want, give Eternity Warriors VR a shot. But if you want immersive combat or more varying environments, you'd be better off with one of the many other shooting gallery games available. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to a brand new concept on this show that I'm calling What You Could Play Instead. What you could play instead of Eternity Warriors VR is Robo Recall. This is another shooting gallery game, but one that has some distinct improvements over Eternity Warriors. For one, while the player doesn't directly control movement, each level does bring you to several different points in the environment. The gameplay also feels more immersive here. The gunplay has a better feel to it, and the world is better defined. Light though it is, there is a story in Robo Recall. It also has many more levels than Eternity Warriors, though they don't necessarily look as distinct from each other as the 2 levels that the latter game has. Besides diverse environments, even if there are only 2 of them, Eternity Warriors also has the edge when it comes to gameplay choices. Robo Recall is a shooter, it's guns all the way. Eternity Warriors lets you use a bow or sword, even if guns are ultimately the best option. Robo Recall is also twice the price of Eternity Warriors, so take your pick. With that, I thank you for watching, and until next time, the horns stay on, but the headset comes off.